Are we ready?
We're ready.
We are ready. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, I've never been in another community where you can lose a NCAA title game and everybody looks so happy. Isn't that something? That's, I think that shows our head is on straight.
It was a great story on TV 18 last night about the police, the West Lafayette police, and how they appreciated how the students celebrated. And Troy Harris is saying, "Yeah, most of us are Purdue grads. We were happy too. We wanted to give them the chance to celebrate, and they did it. It was great."
It was quite a run, quite a winter. It made the winter go by quickly. Sure did. And all of our hearts can be a little stiller now until next season at least. And Eclipse, that happened. That was cool. Who went furthest to see the
Well, I
eclipse?
just went to Indy.
Indeed, very good. Bloomington, that's pretty good. The birds, Happy Hollow Hill. The birds and the wildlife were, I wasn't expecting that. That was pretty neat. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, so we are gonna finish up today with investing, empowering and tearing down walls. I think these were probably my three most favorite chapters. There's a lot in here, so let's jump right in so we can be finished on time. So when we are in the first chapter, I just want to read a little something to get us going. Where Desmond was talking about being accused of being in favor of redistribution of wealth. He said, "I'm not calling for redistribution. I'm calling for the rich to pay their taxes. I'm calling for a rebalancing of our social safety net. I'm calling for a return to a time when America made bigger investments in the general welfare. I'm calling for more aid for the poor and less aid for the rich." So again, this first chapter on investing was very heavily focused on public policy, and hopefully that's something that we know a little bit something about. And so what do you think about his take on investments that we need to make to impact lessening poverty?
I thought what you had highlighted there was rather scathing.
Yeah.
I sit on a man's back, choking him.
Tolstoy.
Yeah.
And you know, when I read that little quote, what popped out at me was, you know, the countries can be different, the eras and the times can be different, but the situations are the same. Are the same. He kind of blended a lot of the content through the three chapters. So if I'm quoting something here from another chapter, forgive me. No, it's from this chapter. I was struck by his $177 billion figure. Wasn't that something? That's on page 124. Where if there were $177 billion input into every man, woman, and child who's poor, that would raise them all above the poverty line, which you know, assuming the cost of things that we invest and spend money on the national level, That's really not the biggest thing.
We could do that, we could invest that.
Especially when you pointed out that we could basically pay for it by fully funding the IRS and tracking our, or tracking on tax sheets.
Yeah.
It says, it's less than 1% of our GDP, and Americans throw away more than that in food every year.
And isn't it interesting that, that particular issue, again, that he wrote about, 3 years ago now, really is a, continuing battlefield, politically. You know, there was a $80 billion, increase, Patty, if I'm wrong on the number, correct me, increase in IRS employees, and I know that because my nephew was one of them, who's gone through training for that, and who is now employed by the IRS. And it's been through the last two budget negotiations slowly whittled back, first to 60, and so there's a lot behind the cloak on those discussions.
He seems to be a big fan of the earned income tax credit and that's very effective. And Patty's work on that, and certainly Lum's been active there. That was heartening
Mhm.
of Lum's influence in that sphere.
On page 128, another thing that popped out at me. The poverty abolitionist in me was saying right on. The middle class homeowner was saying, whoa, now. With it could also be paid for by 25 billion in winding down the mortgage interest deduction, 64.7 billion increasing taxable amount for high wage Social Security recipients, and 37 billion by treating capital gains dividends for wealthy Americans instead of 15%, whatever tax rate they're at. Those would be fights, wouldn't they?
But that points out so much how we already do transfer wealth, but we transfer wealth to the middle class and wealthy, upper middle class and wealthy more than we transfer wealth to the poor that need it.
One little exercise that I wanted to do sometime this afternoon, and I guess now we'll take maybe 5 or 7 minutes to do it. Last time we met, for those of you who were here, we broke out with the person next to us and started brainstorming about what program ideas the chapters we read might be stimulating in our brains. I'd like to do a similar thing, except this time, based on our reading of these 3 chapters, give back when we come back together as a group, the things that Lum is already doing. Because I was really struck going through these chapters saying, yeah, Lum's doing that, and that's why Lum's doing that. Lum's doing this, and that's why Lum's doing that. So if we could take Desmond's reading, compare it with Lum's program, and maybe come up with a list of 5 or 6 or 7 things that Lum is already doing, just to give us a little pat on the back. So let's take 5 minutes if we can turn around with somebody next to us. And if there were new ideas that came up because of it, this would be a time to throw some of those.
We're talking if it's a length time in class.
Well, I get that there were a lot of
Their social justice. And so unless. Well, that's a lot of charity. Things like that, putting money back. How much do you think?
So there's a.
No, okay, all right. What about the business? Well, that's what I mean. What else do we?
Yeah, we did.
In terms of this. I guess. Just more. Programs. You know, positions.
So that whole housing choice.
With
We spend our resources on that. Okay. Well, no, that's the big 10,000.
So that is.
Well, that is, I mean. But just.
I guess.
Receiving it's definitely made for housing because when you're taking a voucher, you don't know shelter. It makes them say that. See that now you back then was living to scale.
So there is.
Almost 50%.
That is definitely. So I guess. Keep it out of it. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So I guess.
They have to live someplace. And when you're.
What?
Interact with.
That American really that.
Well,
Helping.
Yeah, you don't realize it.
Yeah, the fact that we can shelter someone. No, it didn't.
No, I just. Jack talks about.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, so.
Oh, I love that.
But they were.
So now I contact some donors about how much they
We have 65 children enrolled, and probably 5 of them.
Oh, really? When does that come?
For those families, so like this program. So we definitely still have families that are referred by. They come and they do say. We'll just be charged.
So one is.
There's a lot of.
And those are the families that like.
I mean, just that one, when I was sitting there, I saw you went by.
And so some of them.
Against one company.
Okay, we're gonna pull it back together now. And we're gonna put Patty's group on the spot because that's the low hanging fruit over there, the policy, policy area. So what are the things, that LUM has been doing in the policy area that Desmond talks about?
Well, certainly the EITC, but it's not just a policy, because we got the state earned income tax credit by lobbying and got a refundable state tax credit, but then also practice in doing the tax practice. So several things are like that with policy and practice. The minimum wage, we did write the bill and did get, way back when you and John Day were there, got a raise in the minimum wage, and also in practice, LUM raised employees' wages. So policy and practice, I think that those are really exciting to see them go together.
Really, there's not a policy initiative that LUM's been involved in that, if this book had been written, we couldn't have said, yeah, we took it out of the book. So that's, I think one policy piece that he talked about that I guess I had never given much thought to, but I'm gonna think a lot more about now, was the issue of waitresses and, wait staff and non-tip
Tip
folks.
workers.
And, what communities, have been successful in doing away with, non-tips, tip wages, and I can only imagine, the fight that they must have gone through to make that happen. Thank you. Others? Not policy only, but anything that Lum is doing that, Desmond comes from?
We thought about our program for after school, because this last part of the book stressed if these kids could get better educations and have a better chance to making a better life, getting into college, and we're helping on that front.
Certainly. And we talked a lot about that, in our group, as you can imagine. We did. And, I don't know, you want to share anything?
We were just talking about adding the sliding fee scale and, we still do, have a lot of lower income families, but we do have more of a mixture as well with some middle and upper income families and how that's affected us as well. But our priority regardless has been the educational piece of it that maybe some other after school programs aren't focusing on. So, a lot of Susan brought us in a lot of reading, phonics, where a lot of our kids are really behind on that regardless of their income level. And so just prioritizing, giving them that education piece regardless of where they are.
And following up on that, Christy, when I was here, I always thought, and I'm sure it's the same way now, that, Lum's after-school program was probably one of the best quality after-school programs in the community. And I remember getting questions from people on the board and donors. Can wealthy people take advantage of that, as if, that would be a bad thing? And my response was, yeah, because it's in the Lum building on the Lum campus filled with low-income kids, they tend to keep away. And I think what Desmond is talking about in terms of his concept of tearing down walls is anytime you can bring, low-income kids with folks that aren't so low-income, it's a good thing. And
Aspirational.
yeah, so what are the ways that, instead of maybe that being a critical question, it could be turned around, to be an intentional question? I don't know. Any other thoughts for things that Lum is doing that, Desmond thinks would be pretty cool? I thought, again, sticking with the, tearing down walls piece, I thought of Jubilee Christmas Day and how across the community on one day a year, you get 30 low-income families together with 30 church families. And they will see each other's faces, they learn each other's names. Over the course of the hour and a half they're together, they learn a little bit about each other's situations. And how many times have you experienced somebody from your church talking for weeks afterwards about how impactful that was? Now, you mentioned something else that was, also.
Just Thanksgiving and, that's,
Same concept, everybody comes together in a room regardless of income, you never know where people are gonna sit.
Yeah.
right, yeah, and even more than having kind of the giving and receiving side, you're just there to share a meal together.
So, good job, Lum. On your back. Desmond would approve, but.
He also talked about economic empowerment, and that's something that, the social justice team has talked about, and partnering with others, like giving out financial resource guide, and with, Purdue Federal and Homestead Consulting. So working with others to still do the program.
Before we leave the investment chapter, what did you think about, the page or so discussion of, the rental assistance program during COVID? Any thoughts on that? $46.5 billion in rental assistance, that went kind of hand in hand with the moratorium on evictions during COVID.
That it was money well spent. People.
And not only was it money well spent, and not only did it keep people in their houses, and not only did it make landlords balance out, but it tended to be one of the things that we just didn't blow our horns about. It was a successful major program that honestly, I guess I didn't really know that much about. No, I wasn't as involved in it at the time as you all were, but called the ERA, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Okay.
Another thing like the child tax credit that needed to continue.
And then for maybe some of the older folks in the crowd, first time that I've seen Walter Brueggemann referenced in a long time, the great UCC theologian. He had a great quote here. We need to ask if our consciousness and imagination have been so assaulted and co-opted by the established order that we've been robbed of the courage or power to think an alternative thought. Walter Brueggemann. I think he was brought to campus like in the late 70s. I remember seeing the lecture when he was here.
Joe, there was one brought up.
So one of the things we were talking about is that we're tax exempt. We are a 501c3 charitable organization. And he talks a lot about the organization of the tax code in terms of it gives money to people that maybe shouldn't, and people who get tax breaks, maybe they shouldn't get it. But we were talking that if we didn't have that tax exempt status, we would not be able to fund the programs we do. We are putting money up into the community, giving a hand up, and in many different senses, the kids, the food, the housing, tax assistance. And so without that tax benefit, we wouldn't be able to do that. And it comes with a price. We can't lobby, the L word. You know, we can't use a substantial amount of our resources to lobby. We can obviously leverage our volunteers completely, but it does come with a price.
Well, Lum can lobby. Lum cannot be involved in electoral endorsements. So obviously, Lum's lobbied and done a good job of it over the years. So. The other thing that I'm curious about, and Wes, I don't know whether you're in tune to this, but the tax law change back in the late teens changed how donations are credited on taxes. So you now have to have a higher amount
Will
of.
it increase the standard deduction?
Yeah.
So since the standard deduction is so high, not as many people are able to take advantage of itemized deduction because the standard deduction is so high.
And the research that I've read said as far as church giving goes, it really hasn't impacted it because people continue to give to their churches irregardless of what the tax code says. However, I've also heard that some nonprofits, especially in the arts area, have taken hits because of that change. So the last maybe year or two I was here at Lum, that law had just gone into effect. And Lum is obviously still here. So maybe the dynamic here is closer to church giving than it is to arts giving. Just, I don't know, I'm just speculating.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we've seen strong giving continue even post-COVID. but I read enough, about philanthropy nationwide to know that, yeah, what you say is true. It's, fewer people are giving, it's more and more becoming, top end. The super wealthy are funding everything, and the middle class are giving less and less. So more power and money in the hands of a few.
This next chapter, again, as I read through it again, was very intrigued about, but doing it in a LUM setting, especially so, because, as you know, there is that one phrase in LUM's mission statement. Remember it? It says, empowering the least among us is part of LUM's mission. Seeking justice, renewing the church's social ministry, but empowering the least among us. So I read this chapter kind of through those eyes, that this is something that we're required to do, that's missional for LUM. So what did we think of empowerment here? Obviously, labor, he got into, as he does often, through the book. Anybody highlight any part of this chapter?
Well, he does talk about housing being empowering, for sure. That still is an issue we need to work on.
And banks' low interest in financing affordable housing, even though they have the same delinquency as larger mortgages because they're less profitable, not because they're more risky.
And then Jim, kind of connecting that with the federal 502 direct loan program, which is a program for rural homeowners, lower income homeowners, and the thought that hey, great program works in rural areas. Where's the urban equivalent of it? And that doesn't say that the federal government doesn't invest heavily in low-income folks and mortgages through a great number of areas, FHA loans, VHA loans, and many others. And states do a lot of that as well. But anyway, the 502 direct loan program is something I don't know a lot about. Maybe should check into it. I thought, and Wes, bear with me here. I know I'm gonna get nervous when I bring this up, but bear with me. His discussion about abortion and women's health. You know, I read through that and I thought, oh, I don't think we should talk about that in this setting. Because obviously there are those here that, you know, will have feelings on many sides of that issue. But as I read through this again, it struck me that really no matter where we come down on that issue or where our churches come down on that issue, the place that we all converge is with taking care of children after they're here. And so I thought that, you know, Patty and the policy team, when I talked to you recently, you did a pretty good job with the legislature 2 years ago in making that connection with them.
Right, that we did have to, and if we're gonna have more babies, we have to take care of them, right? Right, we did talk about that, we didn't comment on the abortion bill per se, but in investing in children once they're here, that's how we approached it, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, Wes, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
And the prenatal up there and prenatal.
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
So, again, ideas for maybe, what could be in a setting that's unique, to Lund.
He does also talk about payday payday loans, and we have,
Yeah.
had, policy on that as well.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing thing.
And, if I'm not mistaken, AARP has also been
Oh,
a leader on that.
yes, and, the Institute for Poverty.
And so I'm assuming if AARP has been active in that area, that seniors are probably victims of,
Mhm.
payday lending pretty directly. Okay, anybody, anybody struck on the difference between mailing a package UPS and FedEx? I never knew that. Yeah.
You know,
I don't remember that. I have.
UPS drivers are union guys, FedEx drivers aren't. Rolling Rock and Miller are union made bees. Jolly Rancher Candy is union guys. And you can't beat a good slipper spot.
It is interesting, I worked for UPS, in grad school, and the hourly wage I was getting is still the hourly wage they were giving to, assistants to the drivers like 25 years later. So the fact they were unionized made it, I think the impact of that has decreased over time. It was huge back in the day. I could actually live on what I made in 20 hours a week. Sort of, I mean, barely live on, but I could live on it, barely compared to there's no way in the world.
Yeah.
Live on it, thank God. So, yeah, that's changed a little bit over time.
but they did just get a colossal
Yeah.
They did. Yeah.
increase, the union.
And do you think part of that is because, just the availability of workers has changed so much recently as opposed to 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Well, that was many more than that.
Yeah.
But I think just the power of the union overall has declined so much, and it's only barely during.
Great, thank you.
And I would say if we try to, and if we have a policy to try and where it's possible to buy from, women-owned companies or minority-owned companies, but you could also have a policy to try and possible to buy from union companies.
So that's a good thing. Let's go around if you're willing to share, and I'll go first because I don't want to leave you hanging out there. Do you have any of those, shopping preferences that are driven by, conscience or your values? And I guess mine would be, I'll not step foot in, Rural King, because of their, sales of guns. I'll opt to go to TSC instead, to buy things, but I don't know, things like that, anybody? Josh, I know you have a lot.
Don't shop at Walmart.
Okay, and because,
I probably treat employees.
Okay.
So. Yeah, just general small business busting practices.
although, and I'm not defending or criticizing, they were the first large retail establishment to require a $10 minimum wage, and that was probably 7 or 8, maybe longer than that, 10 years ago now. Yeah. Others?
I've gone on a limb here. I shop at Walmart, is the reason you said. I shop at Rural King because I disagree with you on guns. I think there's a place for guns. Okay?
Sure.
I don't use Amazon unless I absolutely have to. I prefer to shop local and buy from smaller, businesses, even if I have to pay more.
Very good, thank you. That wasn't that far out on the list.
It doesn't have anything to do with the poverty, but I do admire Chick-fil-A for closing on Sundays, and so I do try to support them.
Agreed.
Is that a sacrifice, Nancy? Is that what you're telling us?
No,
I'm
yeah.
kidding. I see everybody lined up for the sandwiches. No, I'm kidding.
It is interesting.
I tend to think environmentally, and it talks about that here, you know. Start thinking, what's the effect on poverty on what I'm doing? I don't think through that lens, I think environmental impact and what's going on in that realm. And just their point about the millions of decisions we make every day, rather than blaming everything on the multinationals.
Yeah.
He makes that point on 155. So maybe I need to think more poverty.
My wife only buys fair trade chocolate because of the slave labor in Africa. I don't buy cage-free eggs because I raise chickens and I feel sorry for prison chickens.
Very good.
I think for any of us that have used landscaping services at all, to ask the company, how are they compensating their employees? So
Excellent.
that's a hard question.
Well, I think all of us probably do that to some level in some area. I think the challenge from Desmond was why not do it with ending poverty in mind? And maybe we can turn our gaze and our thoughts to what some of those things might be. Okay. Let's move to tearing down walls. And I think I'm gonna get us started here. This jumped out at me as well. His whole notion of integrating neighborhoods and how important that is, how it's even more important than somebody being given additional income to bring them above the poverty line because of things like, well, your kids are not going to go to better schools. You're not going to be able to shop at more healthy grocery stores. You're going to have better access to public transportation. And
You'll have trees and less pollution and.
yeah.
Consequences there.
um,
Yeah, he talked about that on page 161, simply moving poor families to high opportunity neighborhoods without increasing their income still improves their lives tremendously. Integration works. Like he got the phrase, segregation poisons our minds and our souls.
And it increases children's income when they're adults. When they're just by moving somebody into a neighborhood. Now, we all know, many of us have been to APC meetings, right? We kind of know what those are like and how those go. And probably not too conducive to ideas that would move low-income people into non-low-income neighborhoods. So that's a fight. Now, it's a fight that some have been successful at. And in the book, there's examples of,
Communities where it works.
yeah.
And where Habitat building houses, not just in places that are all Habitat houses, but putting them in different neighborhoods too.
Yeah. I don't know, any stories of anybody that's had a neighborhood, an experience in a neighborhood where There's been some economic integration. Desmond talks quite admiringly about his experience in an economically diverse neighborhood versus when he moved into later, that wasn't so much. And I could kind of see that.
Well, when I read, and he talked about this earlier, but I think he does bring it up again, but, replacing exclusionary zoning practices with inclusionary ordinances and but in New Jersey, it was actually mandated, and so I was taking pictures of it and sending it to my sister who is in New Jersey. Her son, who's my godson, he's 37 and he still calls me his fairy godmother, but he got an apartment that's Bergen County United Way. That I was really surprised that the United Way did this affordable housing, but it's a housing it's mixed. It's not just developmentally disabled people and not just poor people. It is mixed, and it is a requirement in New Jersey to have inclusionary housing and affordable housing. And they used to have, so it's not just a resolution saying this is what we support, it's mandated. And it used to be that some counties could buy their affordable housing credits from other counties. So a rich county could just pay another county for their the extra affordable housing that they have, but they have just ended that, so they can't do that. It kind of reminded me of cap and trade, where you sell your energy credits, but you can't do that anymore in New Jersey. So I thought that was an interesting model.
I know Dennis Carson very, very well. When Aaron Easter was in community development in West Lafayette, we talked a few times. And I suspect if I talked to them about low-income housing, they would proudly point to a lot of resources that the cities are putting into low-income housing. It would be interesting to talk to them in terms of integration and doing it in a way that integrates low-income people into new developments or existing neighborhoods. But I think it's a discussion that should probably be had and maybe get them thinking in some new areas.
Years ago, when I worked in North Carolina, there was a coalition of housing and community development groups in a county just south of Chapel Hill. It was really kind of blowing up population-wise. It was turning into a bedroom community for Chapel Hill and Durham and on the Research Triangle. And we advocated and managed to pass a resolution or ordinance at the county level so that any of these big planned unit developments coming in, and there were quite a few of them, had to integrate a certain percentage of affordable housing into the development. I think they might have had an option to put money into a fund to give for affordable housing. But we did successfully manage to get it in there, and before all the big developments came in.
And then, so what was the experience?
Well, I moved just
Oh,
after
okay.
that, but I know that big development did come in, and either they built affordable housing, or they gave a whole lot of money to Habitat and the Community Development Corporation to be building stuff. I can't remember what it was. But the experience of advocating for it was really interesting and was ultimately successful. And I think the community leaders realized we got these big developments knocking down our doors. We got to do something. We're going to take advantage of this opportunity somehow. They want to be here. And we're gonna have the same thing here. I mean, there's so much apartments building going on in West Lafayette. There's new developments going on all the time in South Lafayette. And they want to build the housing. If there's ever a time to like, put in some requirement for affordable housing, this is kind of it, because there's real desire to build. So.
And then Dennis's son Ben did talk about, about on the county council, how they can incentivize building, affordable housing and maybe pay down some of the points on the loans if they include affordable housing and stuff like that. And there's your buddy.
Oh, look who's here.
Yes, I'm just writing a chat. I'm so sorry to be late, but I had an issue come up, but I'm here.
Okay, I hope it wasn't too serious. Okay, let's, we're talking about tearing down walls. Jumped out at me, the 38% of GDP spent by France, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, other Western democracies on helping with poverty. That's 25% in the US. It kind of ties back into the first chapter on investment. Oh, this was my favorite, and excuse me for a moment of personal preference, I guess. But on page 175, there was the story about the farmer with his dog on the haystack.
Oh, yeah.
That was my dog. And he says that what we tend to do in this country is rather than moving the dog, we go near the bottom of the hay and pull some of the scraps out to feed the cows, when the easiest thing to do would be just to get a fence post and knock the dog off the top of the hay bale, which I've done. So, not that dogs eat hay, but they do find it comfortable up on top of the hay. Okay, anyway, farm story.
On that same page, he talks about Robin Wall Kimmerer and the economy of abundance. And I think that scarcity mindset is something that it scares people to give things away, that they feel like it's just one pie, and if they give away too much of the pie, then they won't have enough. But to switch to a mindset of an economy of abundance, that's a neat switch.
Well, we have about 5 minutes here, and Judd, I know you've read the book and we've talked about it and you're very enthused, so I really want to give you an opportunity to have some input before we have to.
Just a general input. I think these last chapters, they deserve a second reading at least, because there's so much data that you need to kind of incorporate that into your memory banks. And there are so many ideas that kind of push the outer limits. And I guess that's the final thing I want to say. I think by reading this book, I found it pushes my outer limits, and it kind of changes the way I view reality. The most one of the most important things that he said is that poverty benefits a lot of people. Wow, that's a big one. So anyhow, reread it and kind of welcome a switch in how you view reality. Kind of from the bottom up. Yeah.
And Judd, following up on that, again, I think our minds in some ways work alike. I don't mean to denigrate you at all. But insofar as we read something like this and we envision what could be or what if. And I think just a simple thing, this book is just jam-packed full of insights and phrases and quotes. And I think every week in a electronic newsletter, you could do the quote of the week from Matthew Desmond. And just, you know, pick out your favorite quote and put it in. And you know, you'll get some people that'll email back and say right on, and some people will email you're full of this. And but still, it's a conversation piece. And then before I shut up and we turn it back over to Wes, in terms of things that could almost be easy to do, what could be a summer equivalent of what happens at Jubilee or Community Thanksgiving, where churches could be engaged in bringing low-income people into their sanctuaries, and church people rubbing elbows with low-income people, so that it's not only Jubilee or not only Thanksgiving, but now it's something in the summer. Is it you know, something back to school oriented? I don't know what it would be, but if we're breaking down walls, the best way to break down walls is to be together in the same room and in fellowship with one another. So with that said, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to do this with you. And thank you for your participation, good comments, and Wes.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for facilitating the discussion and just the idea and the energy behind all of this. And you too, Judd, appreciate both of you participating in this, bringing this book to us and causing us to think. Somebody who wasn't able to be here today said, let me know what comes of this, you know? And it's like, yeah, I'm curious too, as you know, what will come of this, because there's a lot of great things that we could do. I think it's gonna take some thought to decide what will we do and pursue. I've asked the social justice team, Josh is the staff person on there, Deb and Patty are part of the social justice team, Jim is part of the social justice team, to they've been part of these conversations, think about, you know, what seems like a good course of action, you know, what are the top 2 or 3 things that we think, yes, let's do that as an organization, let's pursue that, or at least bring it to the board and say, these are out of the conversations we've had, these are the things that we think we really need to pursue in terms of local action. So your last idea there, Joe, was really neat as well. Just what would it look like for churches to do something Jubilee Christmas-ish? When I was in West Michigan, as a pastor, we had a traveling block party trailer. And we would encourage sometimes churches, but even more just individuals to just throw a little block party for the neighborhood. And it came with a bounce house and a grill and some cornhole things. And you would just kind of go around the neighborhood and pass out flyers and say, there's usually a weeknight, you know, it's right at dinner time because people got to eat, and just a way to bring people together. What would it look like to encourage churches to do that, or summer palooza event at the church itself, you know, where there was stuff coming on. But I think trying to tear down those walls and make those connections is really key. And I think this book does a great job of advocating for that. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and I welcome your ideas. I'll probably send a follow-up email with the recording of this, but also encourage you to reply to that email with, hey, here are the top, you know, 3 or 30, but I'd rather have 3 things where you kind of sort through that. I think, you know, it seems to be a good fit with LUM. It doesn't have to be a brand new idea. It could be doubling down on something that we're already doing, but that would be helpful information to have from everybody, Judd and Joe included, you know, on what you sense would be a really wise, impactful next step for LUM. So I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, and really appreciate your time.
Bye now.
Take care.
See you, Judd. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Sorry to be late again.
No worries. So Paul, everything's all right.
I might make a plug for those that like this book, Good Shepherd now is reading this one, his first one.
That's Evicted by Matthew Nesbitt. Yeah.
Yes.
And you have a YouTube.
The YouTube video, I sent to Joe and Angel yesterday, and Wes. Where he's talking at, Matthew Detzman's talking at a bookstore in DC. And it's really good. It's got some really good information in the beginning and then the questions. And so more about housing, but how he thinks housing is the basis.
Mhm. Thanks for that.
Very good. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Enjoy the spring.